Okay, so you've really grabbed my attention with this one, excerpts from the 33 Strategies of War, applying military strategy to everyday life. This deep dive is going to be fascinating. We're going to uncover how these battle-tested tactics can give you an edge, whether you're dealing with a tricky colleague, a tough negotiation, just trying to up your everyday game.
What I think is so fascinating about this book is how it takes these grand military ideas and distills them into principles that anyone can use.
Right. And that first one is a doozy. It's all about declaring war on your enemies. Sounds intense, right? But before you grab your metaphorical armor, expert speaker, break this down for us. Is this really about waging war in our everyday lives?
Not literally, of course. Um, think of it more like identifying the obstacles that are holding you back. The book calls them enemies. But it's really about recognizing those forces, either internal or external, that are working against your goals. So that could be a negative mindset, a fear of public speaking, even that coworker who always seems to shoot down your ideas.
Okay, so it's more about shining a spotlight on those challenges so that we can strategize, right?
Exactly. It's about clarity. It's about focus. Just like a general needs to know their enemy's strengths and weaknesses, you need that same awareness about what's holding you back.
And the book mentions Margaret Thatcher, right, as a prime example of someone who used this kind of strategic thinking to her advantage. But it also warns about becoming overly fixated on those enemies. And I'm a little bit of a history buff myself, and one figure who always comes to mind is Napoleon. Brilliant strategist, obviously, but his obsession with his enemies, especially Britain, ultimately contributed to his downfall.
That's such a good point. And the book really emphasizes this. This strategy is about self-awareness, not paranoia. It's about picking your battles strategically, not getting bogged down in unnecessary conflicts. So, for example, if you're dealing with a difficult colleague, instead of getting caught in a power struggle, maybe you focus on building alliances with others, subtly showcasing your own strengths. It's about channeling that energy into positive action, not destructive behavior.
So it's about choosing your battles wisely, like a game of chess, not a bar fight.
Exactly. Now, are you ready for the next strategy? This one's a bit more explosive.
Hit me with it.
It's called the Blitzkrieg strategy, using speed and surprise to overwhelm your opponents.
Ooh, blitzkrieg. I like the sound of that. But how does this translate outside of actual warfare?
Okay, think of it this way. Imagine a startup that disrupts a whole industry by launching a game-changing product, like before anyone else sees it coming. That's Blitzkrieg in action. Or picture yourself in a negotiation and you hit them with a perfectly timed proposal that addresses their core concerns. Totally catches them off guard. It's about being decisive, seizing the initiative, and exploiting opportunities before anyone else can even react.
That's incredible. And it's like that famous saying, I think it was Napoleon who said this, live defeated. And he wasn't obviously advocating for actual defeat, but for the mindset of always being a step ahead, right?
Exactly. It's about calculated risk-taking. It's about recognizing that sometimes hesitation is more costly than action. Preparation is key, of course, but so is having the courage to move quickly when you spot an opportunity.
Okay, so we've declared war on our obstacles and launched a surprise attack. What other tricks does the 33 Strategies of War have up its sleeve? This next section is called The Art of Misdirection. It's all about blending fact and fiction, keeping your opponents guessing. This sounds straight out of a spy thriller. Expert speaker, are we even allowed to use these tactics ethically in our daily lives?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we're not talking about malicious deception or manipulation. But the book does highlight the power of understanding how perception works. It's about being aware of how you frame information, manage expectations, even using silence strategically to influence outcomes.
So it's more about strategic communication presentation rather than outright lying.
Exactly. It's about being deliberate and thoughtful about how you present yourself and your ideas.
This reminds me of Lyndon B. Johnson. Talk about a master of persuasion. He was known for turning political rivals into allies, even after incredibly contentious battles. Any advice from the book on how we can navigate those tricky, post-conflict situations more effectively?
Johnson's approach really embodies what the book calls long-term strategic thinking. It's about understanding that conflicts have ripple effects. So instead of dwelling on past grievances, look for ways to mend fences, to build bridges, even turn former adversaries into assets. It requires empathy, understanding, and a genuine willingness to find common ground. Welcome back. Ready to dive back into the 33 Strategies of War. We've got some real gems lined up for you.
Absolutely. The first three strategies were eye-opening, to say the least. Now I'm curious about this next one, the counterbalance strategy. It's all about choosing the right battlefield. I'm all ears.
This strategy is all about leverage. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most obvious battleground isn't the most advantageous. So instead of going head-to-head where you're outmatched, the idea is to find a playing field where your strengths shine and your weaknesses are minimized.
Okay, love a good strategic shift. Give us a concrete example.
Okay, think about England's rise to power. They were a small island nation, completely outsized by rivals like France and Spain. But instead of getting bogged down in land wars, they shifted the battle to the sea. They built this massive navy, a global trading empire. They found their element, and they absolutely dominated.
So it's like those old kung fu movies. Use your opponent's weight against them. Find that sweet spot where you have the advantage.
Exactly. The book actually calls this the perfect economy strategy, making your efforts count where they'll have the biggest impact. Whether you're aiming for a promotion, negotiating a deal, or even just trying to get your point across in a meeting, this is a game changer.
It's about working smarter, not harder. Okay, this next strategy is a bit intimidating. Death ground.
Hmm.
That sounds intense.
It sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. It's about turning a seemingly dire situation into a source of strength. So think of those, underdog stories where someone facing impossible odds finds this hidden reserve of courage and determination.
Okay, so how do we tap into that death ground energy without actually, facing death?
It's about a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
So instead of crumbling under pressure, you embrace the challenge. You find that grit within yourself. The book actually talks about the Chinese Communist Party's Long March. Facing almost certain defeat, they embarked on this grueling year-long retreat, and instead of being crushed, they emerged stronger, more unified.
Wow, talk about turning a negative into a positive. That's incredible resilience.
It is. And while most of us won't be facing anything that extreme, we can cultivate that same death ground spirit, that unwavering determination to succeed, no matter what obstacles we face.
All right, next up is unity of command, which I'm guessing is all about, well, being unified.
Spot on. This strategy is about the importance of clear direction, especially in a team or organization. The book uses the example of General George Marshall, who, transformed the U.S. Army during World War II. He took this chaotic, ill-prepared organization and created a shared vision, streamlined communication, empowered his people to take ownership. It's a leadership masterclass.
So less chaos, more clarity. Sounds like a strategy we could all use, right?
Absolutely. Whether you're running a company, leading a team, or even just trying to, get your family organized, unity of command is about getting everyone on the same page, moving in the same direction.
Okay, I'm ready for the next strategic move.
Get ready for mission tactics. This one kind of builds on unity of command, but takes it a step further. It's about empowering individuals to make decisions on the fly, based on their real-time understanding of the situation.
Hold on, isn't that like a recipe for disaster? What about the chain of command?
Here's the thing. In our fast-paced world, clinging to these rigid plans, it can really backfire. Mission tactics is about giving your team the freedom to adapt, to improvise, while staying aligned with the overall mission.
So it's like that saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy.
Exactly. The book uses the example of the German military in World War II. They trained their officers to exercise independent judgment, even if it meant deviating from orders that no longer made sense. And it worked. They were incredibly adaptable and successful on the battlefield.
That's a whole different way of thinking about leadership. It's about trusting your team's judgment, empowering them to make decisions when it matters most.
Precisely. Now, ready to turn the tables.
Let's do it. I'm picturing a dramatic courtroom showdown.
Well, it's not exactly a courtroom, but you've got the spirit. Turning the tables is about using your opponent's strengths against them.
Okay, now that's clever. Explain how that works.
Let's say you're in a debate with someone who's known for being overly aggressive. Right. So instead of trying to match their intensity, you stay calm, cool, and collected. The more they try to dominate, the more unreasonable they seem.
Ooh, I like it. It's like using their own momentum to throw them off balance.
Precisely. It's like strategic jujitsu. Book actually uses the example of Hannibal at the Battle of Cannae. He purposely weakened his center, drawing the Romans in, and then bam, he surrounded them.
So it's about being adaptable, turning a perceived weakness into an advantage.
Exactly. It's about being one step ahead, using your opponent's expectations against them. Now, are you ready for a little misdirection?
I'm game. Let's get sneaky.
This next strategy is called creating a diversion. It's about distracting your opponent, drawing their attention away from your true objective. Think like smoke screens, decoys. The art of illusion.
Give us a real-world scenario where this would come in handy.
Okay, imagine you're in a high-stakes negotiation, right? So instead of going directly for what you want, you introduce another issue, something that seems important but is actually less critical to you. This throws them off balance, give you time to strategize, and might even lead them to concede something valuable without even realizing it.
It's all about controlling the flow of the interaction, keeping them guessing.
You got it. It's a classic case of winning the battle for attention and perception.
This is like mental chess. Okay, what's the next move in our strategic playbook?
Get ready for hit and run. This one is all about speed, agility, and picking your battles wisely.
Hit and run. It's like we've gone from chess to guerrilla warfare.
In a way, yes. This strategy is perfect for those who are outnumbered, outmatched. Think of it like this. Instead of engaging in a full-blown confrontation, you strike quickly, make your point, and disengage before they can even react.
Okay. I can see how that would be effective in certain situations. Got an example to, like, really bring it home.
Okay, picture this. You're stuck in a bureaucratic nightmare at work, right? So instead of waging this long and tedious battle, you use a hit-and-run approach. Identify a key bottleneck in the system, find a smart and efficient solution, and boom, you've made your mark without getting bogged down in unnecessary red tape.
It's about maximum impact with minimal engagement. Love it.
Exactly. Now brace yourself, because the next strategy is a bit unsettling.
Oh, boy, you've got my attention. What is it?
It's called terror.
Terror. Okay, that one sounds a bit extreme for, like, everyday life.
I hear you. And let's be clear. The book is not endorsing violence or actual terrorism, but it does explore the historical use of fear as a strategic tool. And understanding how it works can be helpful, even in a purely psychological sense.
Okay, that makes more sense. So it's about recognizing when someone might be using fear to manipulate a situation.
Exactly. It's about awareness, self-preservation. The book actually talks about the reign of terror during the French Revolution, obviously horrific period, but it shows how fear can be used to control, to manipulate. Understanding these tactics, it can be incredibly useful in dealing with bullies, manipulators, or anyone trying to use intimidation to get their way.
It's about building up our own kind of inner defenses against those tactics.
We've got it. It's about recognizing fear for what it's often a tool used by those who lack other means of persuasion.
Okay, deep breath in, deep breath out. I'm ready for the next strategy. Hit me.
This one is a bit more uplifting, I'd say. It's called the moral offensive.
The moral offensive. Okay, that sounds intriguing.
This strategy is all about the power of reputation, public perception. It's about winning hearts and minds, not just battles. Think about, leaders who inspire loyalty and support, not through force, but through their values, their integrity, their ability to connect with people on an emotional level.
So it's about building trust, credibility, showing the world that you're fighting for something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. The book uses the example of the American Revolution. The colonists were brilliant at using propaganda, appeals to liberty, to really rally support. They positioned themselves as the righteous underdogs, fighting for freedom, which resonated with people, both at home and abroad.
It's about shaping the narrative, controlling the message, building a compelling case for your cause.
You got it. And it's not just about politics, right? The moral offensive can be just as effective in business, in personal relationships, in any situation where you're trying to win people over to your way of thinking.
Okay, we've got just a few more strategies to go, right? What's next?
Get ready for the center of gravity. This one is about identifying your opponent's Achilles heel, that one crucial element that holds their entire structure together.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that work in practice?
Imagine you're trying to change a policy at your company, but there's a lot of resistance. Right? So instead of trying to convince everyone individually, you could identify the key decision maker, the person whose buy-in is essential for the policy to change. That person is your center of gravity. Focus your efforts on winning them over, and you'll create a ripple effect throughout the entire organization.
So it's about being strategic, focusing your energy where it'll have the biggest impact.
Exactly. The book highlights the Allied bombing of German industrial centers during World War II. By targeting those key centers of production, they crippled Germany's ability to wage war, even without confronting their armies head-on.
That's brilliant. It's about finding those leverage points, those critical witnesses that can shift the entire balance of power. Okay, I'm ready for the next strategy. Lay it on me. Back for more strategic brilliance with the 33 strategies of war. This deep dive has been quite a ride. Ready for the final push? Expert speaker.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground, but trust me, there are still some real gems left to uncover.
All right, hit me with your best shot. What does the 30 Free Strategies of War have in store for us next?
Get ready for the inside-out strategy. This one's all about mastering the psychological game.
Ooh, sounds intense. Tell me more.
It's about recognizing that the real battlefield is often the opponent's mind. So it's about understanding their psychology, their fears, their desires, their blind spots, and then using that knowledge to shape their perceptions and ultimately influence their actions.
So it's about, like, getting inside their heads, almost like a Jedi mind trick.
It's not quite telekinesis, but you're on the right track. It's about subtle influence. Think of the Trojan horse, one of the most, I'd say, brilliant examples of psychological warfare in history. Right?
Yeah.
The Greeks knew they couldn't conquer Troy by force, so they found a way to exploit the Trojans' own assumptions and desires, leading them to unwittingly bring the enemy within their walls.
That's a powerful image, turning your opponent's own strengths against them. But how do we apply that kind of thinking in our own lives, right? Most of us aren't, like, facing down armies or building giant wooden horses.
Of course not. But the principles still apply. It's about being aware of how our own perceptions can be manipulated, and also how we can subtly influence the perceptions of others. Let's say you're in a negotiation and the other person is using, really aggressive tactics trying to intimidate you.
Mm.
So instead of getting defensive or matching their energy, you could use the inside-out strategy.
Mm.
You stay calm, composed, maybe even a little amused by their antics. By refusing to play their game, you disrupt their whole strategy.
It's like you're saying, like, go ahead, try to intimidate me. It's not going to work.
Exactly. You're shifting the power dynamic without even raising your voice.
All right, the inside-out strategy, subtle, strategic, powerful. What's next?
Get ready for a dose of reality with chain reaction.
Okay, chain reaction. Sounds a little ominous.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of things. One small action can trigger a whole series of consequences, often unintended. The book talks about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which, as we know, set off a chain of events that led to World War I.
Wow, talk about a ripple effect. It's a stark reminder that even, like, seemingly isolated actions can have far-reaching consequences.
Exactly. Now, most of us aren't making decisions that could start world wars, thankfully.
Hmm.
But chain reaction encourages us to think beyond the immediate impact of our choices. Let's say you're considering a major career change, right? It's not just about the job itself. It's about the potential impact on your family, your health, your long-term goals. It's about taking a more holistic view and making decisions with our eyes wide open.
It's about understanding that our choices have ripple effects, for better or for worse.
Absolutely. And speaking of taking the long view, let's talk about the gradual strategy.
Okay, the gradual stratagem.
Mhm.
That sounds a bit counterintuitive, given that, we've been talking about speed, decisiveness. Is this about, like, slowing things down?
It can be. It's about recognizing that sometimes the fastest way to achieve a goal is to actually take a more measured approach.
Mm.
The book talks about the Roman general, Fabius, who famously wore down Hannibal's army through a war of attrition. So, avoiding direct confrontation, but constantly harassing his supply lines, chipping away at his resources.
It's like the tortoise and the hare all over again. Slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that some goals, especially those requiring significant change or effort, are best achieved through patience, persistence, and a willingness to play the long game. Think about, building a business or mastering a new skill. It takes time, dedication, a lot of small steps to achieve lasting success.
So it's about breaking down those big, daunting goals into smaller, more manageable ones and focusing on consistency over intensity.
Exactly. It's about celebrating those small wins along the way and trusting the process.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. What's next?
Get ready for a strategy that's often misunderstood. Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. I'll be honest, that one sounds a bit ruthless.
It can be, especially when used unethically. But at its core, it's about breaking down complex problems or sources of resistance into smaller, more manageable pieces. Think of Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul. He didn't try to fight all the Gallic tribes at once. He skillfully exploited their rivalries, conquering them one by one.
Okay, so it's about finding those natural points of division and then leveraging them to your advantage.
Exactly. Now, obviously, we're not talking about, inciting conflict or pitting people against each other. But let's say you're trying to get a new project off the ground at work, and there's resistance from different departments. So instead of trying to, win everyone over at once, you might use a divide and conquer approach. Talk to each department individually, address their specific concerns, build consensus gradually.
It's about finding common ground, building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly. It's about understanding the different perspectives, the motivations involved, and finding ways to create alignment rather than conflict.
This has been an incredible exploration of strategy and the human condition. What's the final word of wisdom from the 33 Strategies of War?
The final strategy, and perhaps the most important, is the alliance strategy.
The alliance strategy. Okay, that sounds promising. Tell me more.
In a world that often feels, increasingly divided, this strategy reminds us that we're stronger together than we are alone. It's about building mutually beneficial relationships, whether it's in business, in politics, or in our personal lives.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to go it alone, that collaboration is key.
Exactly. The book points to the formation of NATO after World War II. Facing a common threat, Western nations recognized the importance of, banding together, pooling their resources, presenting a united front. It was a game changer in maintaining peace and stability during a very uncertain time.
That's a powerful example of how strategic alliances can make a real difference in the world. But how do we apply that on a more, like, personal level?
It's about cultivating genuine connections, building a network of support. Mentorship, collaboration, networking, these are all forms of the alliance strategy in action. It's about recognizing that by helping each other, by sharing resources and knowledge, we all benefit in the long run.
That's a great message to end on. The 33 Strategies of War. More like the 33 Strategies for a Better Life.
I like the sound of that. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure diving into these strategies with you.
Likewise. This deep dive into the 33 strategies of war has been truly eye-opening. We've gone from ancient battles to modern-day scenarios, uncovering this timeless wisdom that can help us navigate the complexities of life. So, to our listeners out there, remember, life is a strategic game. Learn the rules, make smart moves, and build those powerful alliances. And most importantly, never underestimate the power of a well-placed Trojan horse. Metaphorically speaking, of course.